Welcome back to Gothic Homemaking. As many of you know, I do a lot of shopping for home decor items around the Halloween season. And while a lot of the things that I buy are really amazing, some items can't help to hide the fact that they are made of plastic. Luckily, I have a technique that I like to use on this show to help give cheap plastic items the look of metal! No, just regular metal. Just regular metal. Allow me to show you some of the pieces that I'll be working on today. This is one of my favorite items from last year's Halloween hauls. I picked this up at TJ Maxx, and while it's a really great piece, it's the wrong color for the color scheme here at the Lacquer Voltaire, and it's evidently plastic, but I think we can change that. I'll also be working on these amazing candelabras, also from last year's TJ Maxx's haul. I have 3 of them. Now the interesting thing about this is that they've used a similar technique to paint it as I'm going to. They've clearly painted it black first, and then they dry brushed it after that. But I'm going to use higher quality materials, and I think we can kick this up a notch. Lastly, remember this guy? This was the vegan option in my Scaring Up Bathroom Mirrors episode, and I suspect this one will have the most dramatic transformation, because as I promised, I have big plans for this one. And I suppose it involves some nefarious plot? No me digas. Pay no mind to Count von Crapta's pants over there. We have work to do. We're gonna make like modern day alchemists, and we're gonna turn plastic into pewter. I started out with the crystal ball. I'm gonna paint this black, but before I do, I need to cover the crystal ball with painter's tape to protect it. I mean, I can't see the future if it's all covered in paint, can I? So, here we go. This part is pretty tedious, so I'll speed it up for you. Once the ball was covered, I took it outside and I painted it black with Krylon black lacquer spray paint. Now this stuff is the first part of my 1-2 punch in turning plastic into pewter. The truth is, you can use any black paint, but black lacquer is going to give you a luxurious finish, and anything that you paint with it is going to seem more valuable. The other secret weapon in my arsenal is this. Brush and leaf. You could just use silver paint, but your object will likely still look like plastic. But this isn't paint, it's a metallic finish that actually has tiny bits of silver in it that creates a brilliant patina like actual silver leafing. We're going to be dry brushing this, which is exactly what it sounds like. Just pour some out and grab a brush. Dip your brush in the paint, but don't get it too wet. And then you wipe the brush on paper a few times until it's almost dry and has almost no paint on it. Then you want to just lightly sweep the raised areas of the sculpture so that the silver only paints the elevated areas. It's like lighting with paint because the raised areas become lighter and the recessed areas stay black, so they stay in shadow. This will also give the sculpture a lot more depth than it had when it was only painted with one color, like before. Then it was time to remove the painter's tape. And voila! Here's the result. I see a bright future for this object for years to come in the Lacquer of Voltaire. Next, I painted my candelabras with black lacquer, and they already look a million times better. While they definitely looked like plastic before, now they look like highly polished wood or even ceramic. But it's metal we're going for, so it's time to give these items the same brush and leaf treatment. One thing I'd like to share about this technique is that it works particularly well on objects that are highly texturous or ornate. If there's a lot of raised detail, this is going to work great. It's a bit harder to make it look good on smooth surfaces. But when there are lots of details, they really jump out at you as you dry brush in the most wonderful way. Here's a side-by-side before and after. The silver really brings out the details, doesn't it? With the 2 small ones done, it was time for me to paint the big candelabra. Now here's a great example of what I was saying before. This works wonderfully on highly detailed surfaces, and it's such a joy to see that detail reveal itself as you brush over it. working on the big candelabra, I stumbled upon a great idea. Not painting the base made the objects look like it was sitting on a lacquered wooden base. You know, like those precious vases you see in museums that are sometimes on ornate wooden bases. So I repainted the other two to match. And at long last, I finally get to use those bone-shaped candles I bought at Joann Fabrics last Halloween. Rejoice! And there are the finished candelabras. What do you think? Did I make them look more elegant? Or do they still look the same? Shut your trap or you'll never look the same again! Because I use similar colors and a similar painting scheme, the candelabras may be a hard read on camera. But let me tell you, in person they look so much more luxurious. They really looked like cheap plastic and now they look really fantastic. But as I promised in the beginning of this episode, this next item is going to go through a much bigger transformation. Take a look. When we last left our vegan hero, he was just $5 of plastic glued together. I ultimately decided not to make this a mirror and instead to make it a decorative item. So to that end, I glued this skeleton piece in the hole with some Zap-A-Gap. That looks pretty cool, but it's about to get cooler because I took it outside and I painted it black. And then I took him back to the lab and I put him back on the slab. And it was time for more dry brushing. I can hardly stand the Say it. That's right, patient. In a few minutes, he looked like this. Even for a skeleton, he seemed a little hollow to me, so I cannibalized some velvety material off of a broken jewelry display that I used to use at the merch booth at my shows. Next, I laid the material onto the frame backing and I traced it. And then I cut it out. Next, I sprayed the back of the material as well as the back of the frame backing with Super 77 spray adhesive. And when they were both dry, I stuck them together. I flipped over the frame, inserted the new velvety backing, and it was done. And now, here's what he looks like, lording over the bats that flit around my steam pipe. I hope you've enjoyed watching me turn plastic into metal, or at least something that looks like metal, in this Gothic Homemaking DIY episode. I wish I could make Orville metal, but I can't because he's super lame and only listens to easy listening music. You do?